So we're really excited today to learn with you, alongside of you, and do a lot of networking, really get a lot of thought leadership, and find some great ways to work together, collaborate, and be part of our growing ecosystem. So we're very delighted to have all of you here today. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to the first panel to get started, okay? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We missing one? Well, if we've got a little time, I wouldn't mind seeing a show of hands here. How many of you have been to a blockchain event before? Okay, wonderful. So we have some new, so weirdly, the new people are all on this side. I don't know how that happened. How many of you have purchased a cryptocurrency at some point? Wonderful. How many of you have used a cryptocurrency for something besides speculation at some point? Okay, good. Okay, cool. Wonderful. All right. You guys have any questions? All right. Right, on my end, yeah, there's the big stuff. I like to see, roughly what the crowd's like, understand where we're at in our blockchain comprehension. Here we go. So do we have a moderator? Am I the moderator? Am I the moderator?
You're the de facto moderator.
All right, here we go. Wonderful. Blockchain in the U.S. today and tomorrow, obviously. Everybody wants to know, I think, where things are currently and where it will be. I mean, it's the number one question to start with. Why don't we do a little round here of where we're at currently in blockchain, as you just depicted, as you would tell somebody in your mind. Start on your side.
Okay, so I think when any technology gets adopted, think about the internet for a minute. The first stage is everybody needs to get on board. Then the second stage is we're going to convert existing businesses to whatever this new technology is. You might put a bookstore online. You might put a travel agency online, something like that. But it already existed. And then I think the third phase of that is you create entirely new businesses that wouldn't have existed but for that new technology, like social media or search engines. I mean, without the internet, you don't need Google, right? And so I think if you look at that paradigm, if you look at blockchain or cryptocurrency, we seem to be in sort of phase 1.5. A lot of companies that exist, exchanges, clearinghouses, that type of thing are going online, or converting to cryptocurrency. Banks are still trying to figure it out. But I think eventually, in pretty short order, you'll see things that wouldn't have existed but for blockchain will become sort of new businesses.
Where is blockchain today?
Where is blockchain today? So interestingly enough, we had a mini conversation about it earlier. So I think there are parallels to previous technologies like the internet. The thing that changes everything now is the speed of adoption. Everybody can build a lot of things really fast and try out their ideas. So I think, yeah, we are in the early days, but we do see a mix of businesses trying to move to blockchain, businesses trying to understand how to use blockchain, businesses trying to keep people away from the blockchain because they know how it will disrupt them, like banks. So I do think we're past the early days now that we have the big networks out there live, or the big early networks out there live, like EOS, like VeChain. I think we are at a point where there has to be some serious traction proven soon before the big investors start to discount it as a fad. I don't think that it's urgent, but since already some of these big projects materialized, like there is an expectation from the non-tech savvy market of, do I migrate or do I not migrate to the blockchain? If this guy's that raised a couple $2 billion for the best network ever, and they haven't had one killer app yet, like what do I do next? So I think we're in at least from my perspective, it's an interesting point in time because and couple that with a bear market now in crypto, a lot of people are getting scared of what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I really speak more to the philosophical aspect of it. If you look at the changes in the ecosystem, this is a new way to exchange value. If we look at the human value, social value, people that are really poor, that are in other parts of the globe who don't have sustainability. Many of us who are going to walk away with immeasurable amounts of wealth should have a conscious effort to try to find things we can transport that may not be money, that may not be gold. It could be humanity, whether it's spiritual, whether it's, some would say, metaphysical, or whether it's sustainability for people that are lost, lonely, and forgotten. This is a great transport for humanity. So blockchain, we should be a chain to pull others, to empower, and they should be on our block. And it should be a global block that's a neighborhood of goodness, wholeness, honesty on a holistic level that transfers immeasurable amounts of wealth, health, and goodwill. Let's approach this in the sense that we're thinking of humanity, not just the money.
Philosophy is the lowest hanging fruit right now, I think, in the space, and it's kind of a weird thing. I think about it a lot. So you've heard, I think, three of us weigh in. I'll give you my assessment of what blockchain is currently. We had an environment, obviously in the United States, where during a time of high political doubt, a man named Satoshi showed up, and he kind of created this, it's a little bit, faith-ish way of thinking of things. It's okay. He created the blockchain, which is this bearer instrument machine, which we never had online. And from it, there was just immeasurable amounts of hope and optimism that swelled into the space as a result of people who were able to create financial products for the first time. The US government did not seem to regulate this space. It kind of created like an economic sort of opportunity zone, I suppose. And over time, the sort of stalwart identification of this blockchain as a Bitcoin thing that was just of a libertarian essence has now morphed into what I think is like a very small business environment kind of thing. We've seen a lot of traction currently in the United States with crowdfunding. I think that what's interesting about blockchain for me, what I've seen, if I had to be honest about it, is that lacking regulation, there's almost more sweat equity going into some of these pitches that might have otherwise had happened on like a Kickstarter basis. There was a direct dialogue, I think, right from the opportunity maker to the community. And granted, that kind of went like terribly in some cases, like to be clear, because regulations do work on average. But there's also clearly a latent, unexpressed optimism and ethic in this community that's being tapped. And I think that like some of the Frank Dodd provisions probably quelled some of that optimism. And I think also, we're seeing fewer people that are of the millennial generation, I think, interested in the stock market. They feel like they're being locked out of these institutions. And here in blockchain, it seems like they're finding a place at parity with their goals and dreams. So that would be my assessment of what I see in blockchain. And I think what you guys can take away from this is what you find useful. But then I guess bringing it back into the theme of America, in your mind, regulation-wise, how important is that? And what is needed on that end, either leaving things alone or adding things to the pile in order to see this advance to the next step of the march? You want to go first?
That's a broad question. Can I go back to what you said about blockchain
Sure,
for just a second?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to speak heresy at a blockchain conference, okay? I'm going to say that blockchain is the shittiest of all possible databases. Unless you need a trusted third party and disintermediation. And then it's the best of all the alternatives. So right now it's like the buzziest of buzzwords, but if, in your mind, if somebody's pitching you on the idea of a blockchain app, and you could say to yourself, insert Oracle here, insert MS SQL here, insert any other database there that's optimized for search, that's normalized, that's not flat, that's searchable, that has built-in security, blockchain is not a good alternative. But if you need trust between two parties that don't know each other, it's the only alternative that there is, right? So it's a really good technology, but it's a fairly narrow use case. I know that's probably heresy here, but
There's a lot of like condemnation here because there's so many beliefs on the line, and particularly like not in this room, frankly, but in the blockchain space. I think also people are looking for like the ultimate truth, and that's not the way society works. What we do is we do our best thinking, and then parts of it are true and parts of it aren't. And then I think when we're acting in a more professional capacity, it's up to the audience to take that away. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I've been watching like the morality in the space veer over time from these sort of like very like stilted discussions into these types of things, and I find it very productive.
It is, I think. So let's go back full circle now to regulation, right? Because the question is, if you've got a lot of money chasing a fairly narrow set of real opportunity, there's temptation on both sides to find pets.com is what we were talking about earlier, right? Where it's like not a great opportunity, but it still got funded. This is during the .com craze. This feels a lot like 1998. And what happened was, after that, you had the FTC and the FCC and a bunch of other folks weigh in that really had left the IP space unregulated for a while. Taxing authorities as well. I think you see that here, which is regulators really shine a harsh regulatory light on things when Grandma Jones loses her money, right? And so when that happens, and it will, and it's sort of inevitable due to human greed, I think, to get philosophical for a minute, that's when regulation will come. So in our case with bCause, we're building it with the idea that regulation is inevitable because of the mistakes that other folks are going to make. So why not prepare for it now? And so we don't view regulation as the enemy. We view it as how society governs itself.
Well, is anybody familiar with Garrett Krauss in the room?
Nope.
Okay, well, there's a guy that has this theorem that's coming, and you're going to see a lot of things in September. I'll be happy to give you information on him. He has a whole approach to looking at the system. Some people just want to think about the money, don't care. They say, I don't want to get dirty. I just want to get in, make my money, and get out. Some people are thinking this is the holy grail, like you said, Grandma Jones, who takes her last dollar and thinks this is going to create legacy offering. And then you have some people who are really doing really well in the space and have great models and great platforms, but it's not socially comfortable for them to come to the people that really have the big money. But this guy Krauss has some amazing concepts and theories that speak to this, and I'll be talking about that later.
Cool. Yeah.
So regulation-wise, right?
Yeah.
So I'm similar to you. I think regulations work overall. I don't think that they're terrible necessarily. Talking about specifics like the ICO space, the investing space, I do believe regulations need to be defined. Not so much going one way or the other, but something needs to be defined. But I agree. Regulations are coming, and they will affect systems that are being architected now. So for example, privacy, concerns about sharing information. If you're talking about blockchain design and you're talking about putting information that cannot be changed in the future, and regulations come 2 years from now that say you cannot share that information, it's essentially going to be destroying projects that are released. So I do think when it comes to regulation, I'm not necessarily advocating for more, but I'm advocating for some, at least some ground rules. And this affects everything from the FCC to the SEC. So.
And I think culturally, we look at regulation generally as bad. But let me give you an example of where it could be good. Today, if a credit reporting agency takes your information, they make money on that. In a blockchain environment, you could own all aspects of your information, your credit report, your medical history, all the things that pertain to you, and you could take ownership of that. I think that's a far healthier environment than having disinterested large corporations being able to package us and sell us.
So I'll just weigh in briefly on some of these themes, the way I see it, and this is a bit of a philosophical thing. For those that are new, you're going to find yourself in the middle of two battles right now. There is the derogation side of the space, which are the people who are effectively the bears, who say this is not real, and this is not authoritative, and this is not happening. And there's the reification side, which says, no, this is something we are making real. This has the faith behind it. This has the will of men. And when I think about regulation, for me, that is actually towards the reification side. What makes this not Beanie Babies is the reification that laws provide. And I think 9 years in, I think we're kind of past the Beanie Baby phase. Those years were very hard. You guys probably were less interested, understandably so, at that time. And it is a result of the reification. For those that don't know, reification is the process of making real. We take a lot of things for granted in society. Things like, national borders, for example. When we arrived, the national border wasn't there. It was a gigantic process to figure out how to make that border real, for better and worse. Many people were involved, and through the motivations and discussions and, frankly, difficult discussions, these things became real in the public persona. And I think that that's what I see happening here in blockchain. These sort of internet boundaries is probably what they really are. These are internet communities, and they're, I think, becoming very real in their organization. So we can talk about some of that stuff. What's our time budget here? What are we? How much time do we have? I want to talk about maybe where it's going or what's working. And 10 minutes? All right, so then let's maybe cut it into like a speed round of both. What's working and how will we see that get to where we want to go?
Trial and error is working, right?
Tried and true.
Innovation is a really messy process. Somebody earlier was saying there was like 2,000 coins. I firmly believe that 5 years from now, there'll be 30 or 40. But those 30 or 40 will be Google and Amazon and so on. And the other 2,100 will be experiments that failed. That's okay. That's just sort of the way the whole creation process works.
I'm gonna go into negative. What's not working?
Sure.
I think a lot of people think of blockchain and they forget that it's just software, right? So people forget that they're building a software product, and they have to look at all the concerns that you look at when you're building a software product. So this approach of we're just gonna change the world by replacing everything with blockchain, that's what's not working. So a lot of projects are based on that, which is just vapor. So I think that's what's not working. Yeah.
I think what's interesting is we're immersed in this technology growth, and you're going to have people from different communities, different cultures, and especially these millennials and younger people who are not afraid of this, whereas at Wall Street, you have so much regulation, there's a lot of studying, and it was generally controlled by Wall Street or these sources of power and money. I want to see how that affects the ecosystem, to see people that are fearless, like these young millennials, who have a better grasp on technology than most of the older people that are controlling the controls of money, power, and constructs in this country. I want to see just where, does it make it better? Is it going to level the playing ground now? Is this what we've been praying for? That's the big question.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time dealing with people in the blockchain community and all over the blockchain community. And there's a mix of people. I find the people oftentimes who are doing some of the best work in community projects are the people that were locked out of, I think, incumbent systems for one reason or another. And sometimes it's like really nice, and sometimes it's not so nice. There's a lot of like differently abled people out there in one way or another that have found themselves, by way of happenstance or otherwise, not being challenged in the IRL world to the degree that they're able. And then they come into blockchain and they do fantastic things. And sometimes they're just like 16-year-olds and they're just really good at programming and they're not old enough to get a real job. And they show up here and they do like amazing things. But that is a bit of the economy that we're seeing online currently. And I think too, in the notion of at least the United States is part of that economy, these people are getting connected with people, I think, in other parts of the world now for the first time in a way that we've never seen, in a way that is aligned towards group goals and towards commerce. And I think that the regulations are probably holding us back a bit because I think there's a lot of people who would love to have things like a bank account, very hard thing to get in this business, who would like to have varying tie-ins, who are mostly using this technology because of the regulations in other countries that are permitting very well-abled people from contributing. So like Venezuela is the easy example. They have a wonderful economy of programmers there that are being locked out of the opportunities that would maximize their productivity in ways that blockchain, I think, is helping with. And so I don't know if that'll be an overall trend, but that's kind of what I think we will see going forward. I'm a little bit skeptical of the ICOs personally. If not, it's not even so much that the idea is bad, it's the implementation I'm wary of. I think in more traditional funding environments, we would not see a bonanza of funds delivered on day one, followed by a Hail Mary pass. It would typically be a more steady accumulation of capital given a performance-based metric. My hope in this space is that the governance systems increase in a way that allow us to accumulate funds into an agency or some trusted group that can better regulate the ICOs in the space, either by way of taking those funds and delivering them at intervals or otherwise holding people accountable by some community escrow standards or something. And all of this is starting to happen, I think, for the first time, and frankly needs a lot of help from people like yourselves who are probably better at this kind of thing than the 16-year-olds are, which have been the ones who have primarily dominated the space in its earliest years. How are we on time? We have room for, are we done? That's it? 5 minutes? You want to go? Yeah. Part
of what you're seeing there, and it's sad, it's as if, I'm going to take you back to 1998 for a moment. We had invented AOL here, but the internet had been invented. And the rest of the world had looked at the internet and said, that's a really good deal. We're going to adopt the internet. And Americans had said, no, we're good with AOL. That's sort of what we've been hampered by, is this sort of unfairly stable US dollar. So where you see in Venezuela and Greece and China and around the world where they've really adopted cryptocurrency is because they had 100% inflation and their national currency sucked. And so because their national currency sucked, they're like, we need an alternative. Hey, this Bitcoin thing or Bitcoin Cash or whatever, that makes a lot of sense. We're going to adopt that. And Americans had said, no, we got the dollar, it's good. And so to some degree, we're playing catch up, and we're about 3 to 4 years behind in some areas of this.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole thing was absurdist in its origin, and the people, myself even being principally one of them, reveled in that. And I think that it's shocked even me the degree of success that this has had, which tells me something's real and something's absolutely happening here. And the space is professionalizing, and I have mixed feelings about it. It's good because it achieves the outcomes we want. It's bad because some of the cultural components that I came to love might be dying a little bit with it, but such is the nature of all industries, I think. Well, it's probably a good place to end it, I think, unless anyone else has a final statement. So, yeah, I guess if you have questions for us after this or in the hallways during this, go ahead and ask us. Thanks for hearing us.